Yeah, no, all of that's is looking real sharp. Um, so I guess to just kind of we can go on about the Street Fighter Six bit
For a
for
bit,
just
probably.
about ever, but um, with Core A in particular, like I guess yeah, like have you always just like had these kind of like 4 a.m. diner discussions about fighting game philosophy, and then one day you decided to pull a microphone out? Like, is that the vibe?
Yeah. So I guess I can give a little backstory on Core Gaming, the channel. I don't know if I mentioned this in a podcast or anything, but basically, uh, my video content foray came really from not from gaming, right? I mean, you guys have been doing gaming content. Maybe you guys did something before that, but I mean, I've been doing video content, commercial content for like companies and corporations, and
Hmm.
we've done some cool stuff and then some soul crushing stuff, whatever. But the reason Core Gaming kind of came about was around 2015, business was doing bad. Like I know people weren't buying our services, I guess. So I we were like, okay, we just have to make original content. Like we have all this gear that we're sitting on. We have the know-how, how to edit, and so I like fighting games, right? And that was kind of the time, I think the Street Fighter 4 period, and yeah, I just started interviewing players in my local scene, and then there was a moment where I think this was a time when like this was the era, I talked about MCN era. It might be a similar era. The era where people watch other people play video games. Like, what? Like,
Hmm.
why would you watch
That
somebody
sounds
doing a Let's
stupid,
Play?
bro.
Yeah,
Only
it's
idiots
like the
would do
most.
that.
Yeah, so it was like it was like a time where gaming stuff was getting bigger online and Let's Plays and that kind of stuff was popular. But I think Jimmy Kimmel on one of his shows kind of like called out the gamers, right? And I was just like, oh, that's not fair that Jimmy Kimmel said this. I have to make a response to that, right?
You're
So
better than Jimmy Kimmel.
I
First
mean,
attend me.
yeah, I mean,
Jimmy.
it's he like invited Markiplier and stuff to talk on the show about gaming and why people watch games. For me, I'm just like, it's people watch people do all sorts of things on TV, right? People watch people build houses, go fishing, cooking, talk shows like what we're doing
Mm-hmm.
now. Like people watch other
Mm-hmm.
people talk, right? Why is it so weird that somebody watch somebody else play games, right? I mean, it's uh, so. Um, so, anyways, I was kind of inspired to make kind of an answer piece to that, and I gave it a cringy title, like a clickbaity title, and yeah, I just made that was the first Core analysis video where I'm just like, you know, like this is um, gaming stuff. Competitive gaming is actually a thing, and
Hmm.
it's not really as crazy as you might think compared to other things that we watch. So
Dude,
that
I
was kind
used
of
to
the first
watch
video.
golf with my dad. Like, you want to talk
Yeah.
about can't believe people watch this shit.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and the thing is too is like of all the things to watch, like I remember the description back in when Street Fighter 4 was around, that was like, when it comes to watching fighting games, for anyone who doesn't know what they're watching, it's two people beating each other up with a life bar. It's UFC with a life bar. Like, it's super easy to understand what you're looking at compared to a lot of other things out there, so like it's like, why is it that it's such a difficult
You know,
thing, and
maybe it's just sour grapes. Because I remember having those conversations with you like 10, 15 years
mm-hmm,
ago, Wooly.
mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
like, I remember sitting there and playing like fighting games with you and be like, this is the easiest shit to understand in the world. And then you turn your head and look on your phone at like a Brood War tournament, which is unparsable mess
Yeah, yeah,
to the
yeah.
average person. Or like you'd see like Dota, like early Dota or
Mm-hmm,
League
mm-hmm,
back,
mm-hmm,
like, and it's just like
mm-hmm.
it is just a vomit of
Yep.
color and explosion. And it's like, why is fighting game not somehow
Because
more
fighting
visually
game
popular?
makes you feel bad. Okay?
Yes.
That's why. It's that simple. And I mean, I think you summed it up quite eloquently years ago with the Scrub Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
Quite amazingly. Shout outs to using that name wherever it came from. I don't know, but
It's the narcissist prayer, right?
Yeah, it's just a play on the narcissist prayer.
Yeah.
So it's like the same as that, except like in a gaming context or a fighting game context. Yeah.
But that's exactly it. It's just like, no matter what, I feel bad about this, and I need to just justify why I feel bad. And like that's the whole thing. Is like you
Joke's
wanted,
on us.
yeah, and you kind of were hoping for a result that would make you feel good because randomness would perhaps be involved, and that way there would be no pressure, and then it would be, yay, I won, and that's it. But unfortunately, this genre doesn't do that because most of the time it's like sitting down at a chessboard and wondering what the horse does. Well, step by step we figure that out. But that's why, man. That's why.
Now I don't know, Willie. Like I've had a lot of time to think about this. I've played some MOBAs. I've played some team shooters. And I think the joke is on us because, like, losing for your own sake, that feels pretty bad. Losing because some guy who won't stop calling you a slur is feeding the other team, bro, that is about to make you fucking throw something.
But it also gives you the immunity to not blame yourself because I was blaming my teammates, and when I get carried, I can feel good about how good I was despite being carried. You get to diffuse responsibility with the team.
Yeah, there's definitely you can get salty in team games, no doubt. I mean, just watch any MOBA or whatever. But I think the
hockey game,
yeah, or real sports or whatever. But I think the thing about fighting games, what makes it unique, is that it is one-on-one, but then there's also like, because as Pat was mentioning, it is kind of a simple concept, right? So when you lose in it, it's just so direct. Like even in a game like StarCraft, this is, I actually think like RTS and fighting game culture kind of, they intersect a lot, and because it is a one-on-one thing, and but the thing about fighting games is it's kind of very much like you don't fight until like the opponent surrenders, per se. You fight until you knock them out, right? You beat them. Like you're literally beating up on them on the screen, and it happens in such a short period of time. So when that happens, it's a very kind of you feel like you're violated in a way, right? You somebody just just beat you up, and but of course you can play again, and so there's the saltiness that comes from fighting games is kind of it's you can kind of see how people react to it. It's one of those things where I mean, in the FGC you have tons of different personalities. Obviously, like when Daigo loses a match versus when Low Tier God loses a match, you're gonna have a very different response, right?
A little
slight bit, but yeah, this is kind of this is what's so interesting about fighting games. You can kind of also learn a little bit about yourself, right? And you can. It's a really it's a kind of a personality exposure in a lot of ways, right? I mean, you guys have been playing fighting games for a long time. You guys have played people that are your friends, play people who you don't know, you met for the first time, play people you've heard about, but you hadn't played before. It's all a different dynamic. Like I have a friend, probably the best Zangief player in Korea. He always bodies me, but he's always laughing his ass off when he beats me, or when he gets a SPD on me in some bullshit situation. He's just laughing his ass off. And so like and then every time if I get a win on him, or I can score a round or do something, I'll start to laugh and talk shit or whatever, and tell everyone in the venue, like, get a load of this guy or whatever, right? You have that relationship. And then you have people who are just kind of like, they'll play and then they'll just kind of, they might be kind of more serious about learning the match. There's all sorts of different ways that people respond to playing. Some people cry, when they play.
Known people.
I mean, this is it's a thing.
I've known people who I will play like fighting games here and there, and it's like they say they enjoy fighting games. Every single match I have ever witnessed them play is with a scowl, and just they win, they're mad. They lost, they're mad. I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you here?
There are definitely times where like I'm locked into that idea of like I'm fighting my opponent, I'm fighting myself, and my face is a reflection of how I'm judging my own performance. Like that's a vibe. Side note, my brain is just imagining the world's reaction to somebody grabbing a mic and going, "So Daigo, the next time you need a reminder of what my balls taste like," and seeing like the shock everyone would have at that disrespect level. Yeah, no, the attitudes people have vary greatly. Something
Yeah.
that I also I guess looking and moving along a little bit here, I wanted to ask you about was with some of the many topics you've covered that are all very baseline, but in some cases obvious, but that but really well thought out and phrased things topics you've covered. Has there been anything that over the years that is currently I guess a video that you currently would disagree with based on the way that fighting games have evolved, or based on current examples? Are there any things where you look back and you kind of think the position has evolved a little bit?
Yeah, so I guess the big video that stands out that I did was the why buffs are better than nerfs video. That's kind of a controversial
Really?
video, and I still get like, I think someone on Twitter just told me like, like no offense, but this video has caused irreparable damage to the FGC. I'm like,
Fucking
okay,
love
okay.
that video. That's one of my favorites.
I got
Well,
told I've
irreparable
caused
damage.
irreparable damage as well. So you're all right.
Yeah.
You're not.
No, yeah, okay.
Dude,
well,
I
maybe
played
you used to it, but-
Warframe. Buff me into the fucking sky.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. I mean, I couldn't help but kind of. It's a funny description, but yeah. I mean, that video is kind of like it's kind of a response to I mean, what you see. The conversation's better now, but during that time, it was everything you saw that was kind of good in a fighting game was broken or busted, right?
Oh,
Everything
dude,
is like,
so
oh, that
annoying.
is kind of that's bust, that's broken. That shouldn't be in the game. Like broken, really? Like broken? You want to see broken games? Like see like some of these retro games, right?
Sailor Moon.
Actually like broken games. Yeah, yeah. Like I mean,
yeah.
there are some really really broken games, but people like they would essentially just and then they would make a campaign about it, right? And
Yeah.
on social media, and then what happens is just like everyone's calling out for nerfs, and if that happens too much in a game, I just want to illustrate that you basically like start taking away a lot of things that make the game that it is, right? And so it was kind of like, yeah, it was a biased argument or whatever, but I think people don't like that they get sent that video whenever somebody
Oh,
is saying
yeah?
that something should be
Oh.
nerfed, and like I think there's stuff that should be nerfed, obviously. But the argument that I wanted to make was essentially that I'd prefer more buffs than nerfs.
Yeah.
But obviously, like obviously, it doesn't mean that there's that I'm not I'm against nerfs, or I think it's just a scrubby thing to have nerfs. But I do think more often than not, when people cry nerf, it's something that they don't understand yet. And like I said, this is fighting games where you can lose like for 5 minutes, like many matches, and to one thing, right? You lose to one attack or one move, and then you say that's busted. And then I do the same. If someone does that to me, I'll say it's busted or whatever. Then I'll try to figure it out, and I'll realize, oh, that wasn't so busted after all, or whatever. That was the Dragon Ball Fighters when that first came out. The big example of that was the dash was the
Super Dash.
the
Yeah.
Yeah, Dragon Dash.
Super Dash, yeah, that leads into a launch or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that move, everyone was just spamming that and getting, just busting people up with that.
I made a
doing
fucking flow
max damage
chart.
combos. yeah,
Making
there's
fun
like a
of
flow
it,
chart. Yeah.
I made that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then no, it's that move is definitely kind of you can do that at the beginning phases of the game, but later on people are just like, oh, 2H, like down,
That's it.
heavy punch. When they do that, it's completely reactable, and yeah, now you can do a huge combo on them. So there's like an answer that, and so I remember there were some memes where people were just like had like a giant 2 and an H like on top of like Goku or something, like 2H, and so yeah, there is stuff like that, and of course with the way social media is, you can just put whatever you're feeling, you can just put on, publish it, right? That's
Yeah.
really something that you couldn't do before, where
Oh,
before you had to write
I
a
say
letter.
stupid shit every single fucking day.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I remember too that like that. I mean, not just that video, but like the first time I remember the it was I think a Seth Killian quote where he talked about like we like to buff up instead of nerfing down, right? And got that. I remember that specific quote got me thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, I think overall that's a general idea that prioritizes making characters more fun and having more tools to deal with what the best characters can do in general is a positive philosophy to have, even if, but it doesn't mean it has to be a strict hard rule that is militantly we will never nerf anything. I think it's
Some
overall
shit has to
a
go.
guiding philosophy, that is like steering towards people enjoying the game more.
Yeah, when you're playing tournament fighters, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle tournament fighters,
Get your
and you have
Karai
characters
on.
that can infinitely throw into their own throws. Yeah, no, that has to go,
Yeah.
right?
But
The game that I always think of when I think of that video, and I actually brought it up on my show a couple weeks ago, right before Street Fighter 6 came out, was Overwatch. And how Overwatch decided that it wanted to be a fair game and it wanted to be an esport, and every single patch for like a solid year made that game less fun to every character that it touched. Every couple of weeks, someone would get to find out that the one thing they like to do with their character no longer existed or sucked. And everyone I knew stopped playing that game as a result.
Yeah, there's definitely so I guess there's another side to the argument of like accessibility, or games that are like shouldn't be a certain way. So this is where you get into the idea of like game mechanics and what it should be, right? So I always make this analogy. I mean, there's a lot of complaints about like some of these fighting games where it just has a bunch of stale blood, no new fresh blood, no new players, very few new players because this is become a boomer game or whatever. And yeah, I mean that is a concern, but like there's also like on the other side, it's kind of like, well, I mean, there's some things that are just not as popular to everybody, right? That exist, right? That's just like mustard will never be as popular as ketchup, right? But
Right.
you don't make
depends
mustard
on who
taste like
you
ketchup,
ask,
right?
apparently. But
Well, okay. But I mean, like in terms of like the amount of like people who.
Hey man,
consume
when
it,
I go
right?
to a burger place, the ketchup's at the table, I have to ask for mustard.
yeah.
Oh, I'm a mustard person, like completely, yeah. But it's like we live in a ketchup world. But then it's
his,
like
his wife
like
chugs it. It's a thing.
Yeah,
on
yeah.
Don't bring this up. We don't have time for this.
But yeah, I mean, like you don't have like mustard people trying to make it accessible for ketchup eaters, right? I mean, it's not really a goal, right? So at a certain point, like there's you have to just call a spade and say this is that spade. This is what the game is, and we're not going to have this other thing, right? And that's when like I guess like the way indie games are more able to do that kind of thing because they don't have to worry about like investors like breathing down your neck about onboarding and whatever how how accessible is this game. But this is the thing, right? If you make a game that's really just for everybody all the time and you go to that extreme, then you don't get stuff. It'll be very difficult to get stuff like Dark Souls, right? So like the
Yeah.
Demon Souls, that game was famously like considered like garbage by very important people in the industry when they first saw it. A game being just so unforgiving and whatever. But Miyazaki, the creator, just stuck with his guns, and now it's like, and then it just made a bunch of Souls-like games that are like, okay, now like hard games are back, I guess. Like and so it's like that can't happen if everybody is just like, oh, every game has to be beatable by everybody ever, right? It's so
and getting it through the door, of course, required a little bit of deceptiveness initially because like that was a somewhat of a secret, right? And the idea though that you have this thing that becomes famous because of how challenging it is, and therefore it trickles down and reaches to people who come back around and go, why isn't this easier? This should have an easy mode in it. It's just kind of a weird, funny cycle how like the thing that made it popular to begin with then kind of becomes the problem on the back end as long as it gets large enough, right?
Yeah, that's the topic of one of my I guess more recent videos, but it's not that recent. It was like last year. I've been making. I'm at a video a year now on my channel. Apologies to everyone out there
Yeah,
waiting
well,
for new
the
videos.
miracle of Pakistani Tekken is one of the best videos I've ever seen on YouTube. So
Which I
take
wanted to
your
get
time.
into in a second. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's a relief. But it's I guess like you can kind of see it this way. So the video business that I'm running with the guys, the better that's doing, the less videos there are on my channel. So if you want more Korea gaming videos, you have to like sabotage our company, and
Okay.
basically,
Okay.
it's kind of so the Pakistan video, I guess the background to it, the reason that got made was because it was kind of like a side hustle video, I guess. So we were doing a some content for this one esports event where they were basically having an invitational in Tokyo with the best Tekken players, and so we got the gig for that, for making the interviews and going around, making content.
Mhm.
There was Arslan Ash was one of the invited guests for that video, and or for that tournament, and so they needed somebody to go and film Arslan Ash in Pakistan, right? And I was just like, oh yeah, I want to do
Okay.
this, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so this was not a Korea gaming thing. This was for an esports thing. But I asked like, hey, can I go there? Can I like, film stuff for my own content? They're like, ah, cool. It's okay. They're really cool about it. So I went to Pakistan on another gig, but I extended my trip there to, I think, like a week or something instead of just a few days, so that I can make a Korea gaming video. And so that kind of became an opportunity, and I was able to squeeze that video in because of my other work. So yeah, I still work on my videos, but it's unpredictable because I don't know when the next a big job will come in and I'm needed, right? So I'm trying to wean off of my role in the other stuff and go back to the Korea gaming stuff as much as I can. And I kind of made like a New Year's resolution about it this year, but you know how New Year's resolutions go, right? So,
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even
I
bother
mean-
making them.
yeah. So
as was just mentioned, like I feel like the quality of that type of like full on story, that can be told in that way is, I mean, I love some good fighting game design discussion, and I love being able to point people in that towards that. But these types of stories are like just interesting and fascinating to a whole other level, and like I still like constantly am just talking about the idea of the pay per loss type of situation that they have there as an example of how one levels up in a different community. Like it's so good. And I guess I'm just I wonder if if we're looking at essentially fewer videos, but the quality of what you're tackling will be a much more involved endeavor. If that's what's next for Core.
So yeah, Gerald, we're putting you on the spot. So your next video is going to be the best one you've ever made, right?
yeah. So I guess in terms of content, I'm working on on an analysis video right now. Actually, I can reveal it here. But it's basically the next video I'm working on is it's about fighting games and mechanics, I guess. But it's kind of you remember that it was a while ago. It was the last time the Project Hell guys released gameplay footage.
Yeah, with Eloy.
Yeah, of Project Hell. That was there was somebody who said I think it was Reddit. Somebody was like, "Oh, okay, this is a Tekken-like game that they're working on, right?"
What?
And everybody was like, "No, unless if Tekken had air dashing, like sure." But there's a confusion about fighting games that I realized when thinking about it. Like, this is it's actually kind of an honest mistake for a lot of people because I mean, if you look at fighting games now, how many games have like two life bars and a timer in the middle, and then two people facing each other side to side, and then they deplete each other's life bars until one gets knocked out, KO, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, like Tekken and Street Fighter are the same in that respect. But if you play these games, you're like, well, the mechanics are really different, and like, you can't do this in this game. And we all know, if you play fighting games, like that's not, that's not a proper comparison. But then like it's like somebody who's never had like, Vietnamese food, might say like the spring rolls are just burritos, right?
Yeah,
Well,
or
that's
it's
just a
like
burrito.
a friend of yours listening to you talk about Pillars of Eternity for over an hour, only to say that's like Diablo, right?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, something like that.
Sure, yeah. So I mean, like, yeah, this is the
Yeah.
thing, right? This is one of the perks of having a wife who's not a gamer. My wife doesn't play games, so I get a good perspective about these games. Like she'll make observations and say things that I'm like, oh, that's right. People probably would see this game like this, and this is something I've noticed with like fighting game animations in general, like how clunky it is. Like if you see like mainstream like shows and TV that kind of make fun of like fighting games or gaming in general, you'll see them do like the weird movement.
Yeah,
There's like the yeah,
yeah.
like I think like a long time ago when Chappelle did the Grand Theft Auto like sketches, you see
Yeah.
the movement where it's kind of like and it's like,
Stilted.
oh yeah, that probably does look like funny to people who don't play games, but when you play these games, that's just the fact of gaming. Like
Yeah.
that's what it looks like, and you don't really think that looks weird, right? So, I guess a lot of the perspective of my videos often come from like people who, I guess the goal for me is, I think these people are smart. These are smart people that just don't know this thing, right? You're
Yeah.
not like, it's not like because you don't know about this gaming niche community or these gaming mechanics, you're an idiot, right? So the way I want to make my videos is that, you know, th- you don't know this stuff, but this is pretty cool. Let me just show you why it's cool, and then they'll be like, oh, okay, I get it. It wasn't like so weird and hard after all.
Okay.
Frame data is not like this radical, like this. It's not like rocket science, right? And so, so this is where I think like in some FGC media and content, there is this there sometimes can be a tendency to be like, well, this is what footsies is. Let me tell you, don't mistake footsies gets mistaken for being a lot of things. Like you don't want to
Like
be one of
low
those
attacks.
people. Like this
Oh,
is
low kicks.
and
Yeah.
and then there's kind of this like let me just sit you down and like educate you, you fool. Like you don't. And I guess that's not my approach. So for the Tekken thing, and I always feel that way until like I think about it for a while. Like yeah, obviously this is not a Tekken like game. Like this is Project L. There's like a people are flying everywhere
But-
and there's like projectiles and
But
yeah,
at the same
right.
time, like there's a lot of people that I know people who are everything they see whenever a fighting game comes up is Street Fighter 2, right? That's their reference point. I also know a number of people that their updated reference is actually Tekken 3. That's the last time they
Yeah.
played a fighting game for a long period of time. So everything they see that is anything remotely fighting game like is actually
It's 3D,
called
right?
a Tekken, like because of that. It's specifically, I mashed around as Eddie Gordo back in the day. So that's the reference that it'll
My
always
mom
go to.
still asks me if I'm gonna go to work and play on my Nintendo.
Yeah, that's it. That's the reference point, Okay.
Yeah, and I think so. A lot of comments I get with my content is people say like, "Oh, I don't even play fighting games, but I enjoy watching your stuff, right?" And so, with this video, like basically, I want this video to basically where you can send it to a layperson, and they will just watch it and they will understand every single fighting game genre and how it works. And that's really ambitious,
Cool.
and this seems almost
Okay.
impossible. But
Okay.
but I think I found a way. I'm working on it as best as I can with whatever time that I can find. But I think it'll be an awesome video. I think people will enjoy it. I think it'll be shareable. Basically, the question is one of the big questions that's answered is kind of like what makes a fighting game a fighting game.
Right.
I think one of the questions I posed in it is like, why is Valorant or some first-person shooter not a fighting game when there's fighting in it, right?
Yeah.
Some idiot might
And
make a video using a word called fighting gaminess to describe that. I don't know.
yes, I remember. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. Yeah, no, that's the fighting gaminess aspect is, but these things are real, right? Because like if you think about like taxonomy, like the way they classify animals and mammals and
Hmm.
stuff, right? It's not like a perfect science. People disagree all the time in the sciences about like how to classify stuff, and there's like even like simple things like is a hot dog a sandwich? There's like an argument about that, right? But you know that a
Yeah.
hot dog is kind of it's a thing, right? But it's like well, it's kind of a sandwich also. So I think the fighting game genre stuff uh, can kind of be like that, but that doesn't mean that you can't figure out something about it, right? If you
Hmm.
if you just like present it in the right way. So I think these games, uh, the genres and stuff, once people understand what they are, they'll be like, oh, okay, this is kind of the game for me. This is not the game for me, or they'll get a better idea of what to get into. A lot of people don't know what game to play when they get in. They're like, I'm going to get into fighting games. Like, okay,
Yeah,
what are you going to
where do
play?
I start? What do I do?
Yeah,
Yeah,
are you going to
yeah,
play like
all
a
that.
party game with like 10
Mm-hmm.
people and be the king of that, or you're going to go into like an establishment game where you're going to compete in like a 5,000 person tournament
Or are they gonna
or
go
whatever
hang
in
out with their
between.
friend and play that man in fucking Strive and just have a
Yeah,
brain aneurysm?
yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, there's an aspect to that too where like I feel I've heard many people make that declaration over the decades, and there's always a bit of a like, okay, that's you're not being sold in because your friend specifically showed you Smash Brothers. You're sold in on the idea of the whole genre, and like that can go a lot of different ways, based on your taste and what you think is fun and stuff. And I kind of like I know that it's becoming less and less of a real like feasible possibility depending on where people live, but I always try to kind of push the like go check out a local aspect of things as much as possible, because like that environment, you might like think you're going to see one thing or you're interested in something, and you might see some people in the corner playing another thing over there, and you might go, what is this, what the fuck, what, and then you'll like take a peep at the scene going on, and like that might catch your attention, but you're in an environment that is like the equivalent of a bunch of arcade machines lined up vying for your attention. I feel like that kind of
Exactly.
environment.
Yeah, that's a huge part of also the fighting game that you play, right? There's like the community aspect, right? I think this is why it's not as simple as saying play what you like. I mean, that's kind of like I think it's something that's often said when it comes to like, what fighting game should I play? Play what you like, because like your most favorite game might not necessarily be the game that you want to invest all your time in. Because, for example, I can give an example. Like if you have a smaller game, like I know a friend his favorite Smash game is Melee. That's not uncommon, right? But what
Of
is
course.
uncommon is Melee players in South Korea, right? So how do you play Melee here? There's like maybe like 5 people that like want to like grind and get better at the game here. Most people are playing Ultimate, right? So that's fine, whatever. But play with those 5 people. But what if you don't get along with one of those 5 people, or they're somebody that you don't really want to hang out with, or meet up with? Maybe there might be some tension there. I don't know, but that's it. You have to be with those people like every time you play Melee, right? You have to see that person all the time. Whereas in Ultimate, like you can have clicks if you want, or you can kind of like, get away from that, or you can go on a different day, or I don't know. There's so that's one aspect where yeah, this can be your favorite game, but like well, you can also play your next favorite game, and there's all these other things about it, right? So
Do you,
that are benefits. So yeah.
do you guys have like that kind of setup at Core events? I guess that the venue that you kind of showed
Yeah,
off.
yeah. So Ultimate is kind of like it's pretty hot out here. It wasn't when a few years ago. Basically, I think during Smash 4, there was like 10 people playing, and I think when Ultimate came out, there's a TO that I work with. He goes by JLu, and him and a partner named Tom, they were working on kind of building the Smash Ultimate community together,
Okay.
and it was like I think I did a video about like TOing, how you grow like a tournament or whatever,
All
and
right, I
basically
remember
like
that.
I think he was in that video briefly, but it was interesting to see this thing actually grow to a significant number, and we had people like the place we were doing it at was like this place called Retro Game Bar in Hongdae. Shout outs, they're a gaming themed bar, and basically like it got so packed that it was like getting borderline like fire hazard because there's so
Oh
many
shit.
entrants, right? And so it kind of outgrew that. That place got outgrown, and it was one of the catalysts for uh, having a core A space, right? So I reached out
Hmm.
to JLu, the TO, and I was like, hey, what if we had like our own space where you don't have to worry about like people vomiting, in the bathroom, from getting wasted and all that stuff. And he's like, oh, that sounds
Mm.
amazing. And so it's kind of it's a long story short, but that's kind of how the venue came about. And so basically, it was kind of Smash Ultimate that kind of like carried the venue for a while. And then of course there was other games. And right now, Guilty Gear Strive is kind of
Yeah.
the Guilty Gear guys, the anime guys in general, are they come out and they play, and they have so much fun with the game, and you have like cosplayers and stuff, and it was awesome when was it Apology Man, Super Noon, and Jonathan Tene. There was like a crew, U.S. crew of Guilty Gear players who came to Korea, and like we had full house, and all the players came out. They were like spectators too, like people who
Sick.
don't